The NHL as a league is constantly evolving when it comes to changing the rules, changing the equipment, or even something like putting electronic sensors in a hockey puck, which we will actually see in action in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And a lot of different things can spark a change to the game, but sometimes a player's actions can directly result in a rule change. And that is going to be the topic of today's video. We are going to take a look at 10 players who forced rule changes in the NHL. But real quickly before we begin, if you guys are new to the channel and you want to see more NHL content like this, then be sure to hit that subscribe button, and let's not waste any more time and jump right into this video. Kicking off the video with Rob Ray, who kinda reminds me of Ross the Boss Ray from the movie Goon, not just because of their similar names, but they shared a very similar playstyle as well. They both love to beat people up. Rob Ray played in the NHL from 1989 up until 2004. He played 900 total games and had just 91 points, but he did have 3,207 total penalty minutes, so it kind of makes sense as to why he didn't score much, because he spent most of his time in the penalty box. When you fight as much as he did, you start to pick up some things, and early in his career, he would be quick to lose his jersey and his shoulder pads, thus no longer giving his opponent anything to grab onto, allowing Ray to control most of his fights. That is until the NHL implemented the Rob Ray rule, which is described as a player who engages in fisticuffs and whose sweater is not properly tied down, and who loses his sweater in that altercation shall receive a game misconduct. Although Ray was never really anything more than a peer enforcer, it's still pretty cool that he was able to, in a way, change the game. Next up we have Sergei Makarov, who played the majority of his pro career in Russia, but when he came to the NHL for the 1989-90 season, as a rookie for the Calgary Flames, he played very well, putting up 86 points in 80 games. This was good enough to win Makarov the Calder Trophy as League's Rookie of the Year. The only thing was, he was 31 years old, and a lot of people did not take too kindly to this. The NHL would then implement a rule that got the nickname the Makarov Rule. This states that only players younger than 26 years old on September 15th of their rookie season can be considered as a Calder Trophy candidate. However, since then, the rule has actually changed again. Back in 2016, when Artemi Panarin won the Calder, the league faced a good amount of backlash. The requirements to be eligible for the Calder became even more strict. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm a big fan of this rule either, because the Calder Trophy is awarded to the league's Rookie of the Year, and no matter your age, your first season in the NHL, you are technically considered a rookie. But make sure to let me know what you guys think about that rule. Moving along, we have a pretty recent one, John Scott, who was an enforcer through and through, and definitely a fan favorite. So it was pretty cool to see the fans vote John Scott into the 2016 NHL All-Star Game, although his career high in points was just 4. Obviously, he didn't deserve to be there, but the fact that the league hated it so much made the fans love it even more. And it turned out to be a pretty incredible story. The other players in the game embraced John Scott, and he actually won All-Star Game MVP. And of course, when this was all over, the league wanted to implement some guidelines to ensure this would never happen again, and that is exactly what they did. Some of those guidelines include if a player is assigned or loaned to the American League or any other minor league team between November 1st and January 22nd, the player is not eligible in All-Star balloting. If you ask me, the All-Star Game sucks. It's pretty boring, and this was actually the last time I was invested and interested in an All-Star Game, so it's a shame that something like this won't ever happen again. Next up we have Sean Avery, who is well known throughout his NHL career for his on-ice antics, and now after his playing career, he's well known for his off-ice antics. He drives around New York City on bikes and scooters, yelling at anyone in the bike lane, and it's pretty hilarious. You can usually see it on his Instagram story. One of Sean Avery's more infamous moments came back in the 2008 Eastern Conference quarterfinals against the New Jersey Devils, where he stood facing Martin Brodeur, waving his hands and stick around in his face, attempting to distract him from the play. I'm surprised that was actually the first time something like that had happened. I figured someone at least would have tried that throughout the history of the league. The NHL immediately cracked down on this. The next morning, they issued a new rule, and it is known as the Sean Avery Rule. It makes it illegal for a player to stand in front of a goalie and wave his stick or hands in the netminder's face. The NHL announced this behavior would result in a 2-minute penalty. and nobody has really ever tried it since, as it would be a pretty ridiculous thing to get a penalty for. Continuing on, we have Tony Esposito, who is well known for being one of the greatest goaltenders of all time. He's 10th on the NHL's all-time wins list with 423. He also won 3 Vezina trophies throughout his career that spanned from 1968 all the way up until 1984. He was also known for his tricks when it came to the goalie equipment. His catching glove and his oversized pads are just a few. But one that really blew my mind was the spider web. If you don't know what I mean, in 1969 he added a piece of equipment to his goalie pants. He sewed a piece of elastic mesh between the legs of his pants. It was basically a web between his legs to eliminate goals through the 5-hole. If you ask me, is pretty genius if you can get away with it, and for a while he did, but of course the NHL eventually scrambled to make a new rule banning this because it obviously gave him a pretty unfair advantage. Speaking of one of the greatest goaltenders of all time, we have Martin Brodeur, who is first on the NHL's all-time wins list with 691 and also first on the NHL's all-time shutouts list with 125, and also won 4 Vezina trophies and 3 Stanley Cups throughout his Hall of Fame career. Marty Brodeur was also fantastic at playing the puck and oftentimes would beat opposing forecheckers into the corner in order to keep possession for his team. In an attempt to increase scoring in the NHL, the league implemented the trapezoid, which pretty much prohibits goaltenders from playing the pucks in the corner. If they do, they'll get a 2-minute penalty. This obviously really affected Brodeur's game, and he definitely wasn't a big fan of the rule either and was pretty vocal about it. Playing pucks in the corner is something Brodeur had almost perfected and done so well for so many years throughout his career, and the league kind of just took it away from him, and the trapezoid is something that we still see in the NHL today. Moving on, we have the Montreal Canadiens. Now, this isn't necessarily just one player, but pretty much the whole team, and it really speaks to the dominance of the Canadiens throughout the 1950s. Obviously, in the NHL right now, if you're on a power play and you score, the power play is over and the penalized player comes out of the box, but that wasn't always the case. Back then, if you had a penalty, you had to serve the whole 2 minutes no matter what happened. The Canadiens, being the dominant team that they were, would often score multiple goals on a single power play. One time, Jean Beliveau actually scored a hat-trick on the same power play in 44 seconds. Other teams around the league crying for change ultimately led to the league implementing the rule that of course still stands in the NHL today. Just imagine if that rule had never changed and players like Alexander Ovechkin, Austin Matthews, and David Pastrnak had opportunities to score multiple goals on the same power play. Moving on, we have Brett Hull, who gave us one of the most controversial moments in the history of the NHL, scoring the triple overtime winner in Game 6 of the 1999 Stanley Cup Finals to win the Dallas Stars the Stanley Cup. But his foot was clearly in the crease. Although in the NHL today, that really doesn't matter, and seemingly every game there is a goal scored where a player is almost on top of the goalie, but back then, that was a pretty big no-no. Brett Hull's goal standing led to a ridiculous amount of backlash from the fans and from the Buffalo Sabres organization that led to the league just abolishing the rule completely. But that never took away from the fact that the goal just should not have counted. His foot was clearly in the crease, and this is something that I'm sure still angers Buffalo Sabres fans to this day, especially when you consider where the organization is at right now. If this had just been in a regular season game or something, I'm sure nobody would have really cared, but getting a call like this wrong on the Stanley Cup winning goal is pretty inexcusable. Next up, we have Blackhawks legends Bobby Hull and Stan Mikita, who are often credited as being some of the first players to play the game with a curved stick. In doing this, they obviously experimented a bit to try to find the perfect curve, and sometimes they even used a curve like this, which I mean is pretty insane and would suck for goaltenders because how is a goalie supposed to track where the puck is gonna go if the shooters have no idea where it's gonna go? I mean, there's no way you can aim a puck with a curve like that. Obviously, the NHL eventually cracked down on this, and the curve of a blade now is limited to an amount between a half an inch and 3/4 of an inch. And of course, if you're caught using an illegal curve, you will be given a 2-minute penalty, and on top of that are forced to change to a stick that actually has a legal curve. And the final player of the video, former NHL goaltender Gary Smith, who played in the league from 1965 up until 1980. Gary Smith was quite the character, and according to an interview he had back in 1997, in his very first NHL game, he left his crease in an attempt to score a goal. He got to the Canadiens' blue line, but got nailed. As a result of him always wanting to skate past center ice, the NHL introduced a rule preventing the goaltender from doing so, and if they did, they would obviously receive a penalty. Gary Smith didn't really have a memorable career in terms of his accolades, but one thing he can always say is he is responsible for the rule that doesn't allow goaltenders to cross center ice. Even though that rule never stopped Patty Waugh from trying it though. That is going to do it for this video on 10 players that forced the NHL to change the rules. If there are any that I missed, make sure to let me know down below in the comment section. And as always, if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure to go down there and drop a like on it. That is the best way to show your support. And of course, if you guys are new to the channel and you want to see more NHL content like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys on the next one.